Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writers Drinking Whiskey, your literary travelogue. I'm your slightly tipsy gondolier today, William R. Hensey, and today we'll be transporting you to Italia, most specifically a small town on the heel of the boot known as Salento. And our travel guide for this occasion is wonderful author Donna Keel Armer. Donna, buonasera. Welcome to the Whiskey Bar.
Grazie mille. I'm so happy to be here. If I could just say one thing, the name of the town is Otranto.
Otranto. Okay, so I say it wrong. I don't know how
you said Salento. Which is the region.
The region, okay.
Yeah. It's like, I live in the South Carolina Low Country, so we're called the Low Country. Well, that part of Puglia is called Salento, but the actual little fishing village is called and you have to really emphasize that Otranto.
Otranto. That's good to know. I butchered it, and I just went from the title of the book, right?
Yeah. So it's very confusing. And people will say to me, I've been to Sorrento, I've been to Salerno. And I'm going, nope, it's not either one of those cities.
Sure. I believe it. Yeah. It's funny because my son's going to see this and he'll get to make fun of me because when he was, growing up, he was homeschooled for a few years. He's back in public school now, but I would drill him on this is your city, your cities and your state, your states, and you're right. You're in this county and stuff. And he's like, it's so confusing. I'm like, it's not confusing. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it is confusing. It's just, when you grow up with it, you don't notice the crazy amount of markers we set everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it is. We're all confused. If you can imagine other countries looking at the United States and saying 50 states, you got all the states and the capitals and the regions and all that sort of stuff. That's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll give you the brief bio here, and feel free to jump in with anything. And I always include bios with the show, so anyone wants details can go there. But so you have the book Solo in Salento. You have a travel blog, and then concurrent with us releasing this episode, you'll be releasing a new book called the Red Starfish. Anything else you'd like to mention?
Yes, my book Solo in Salento was translated into Italian. And so I did a 10-week book tour in southern Italy on the mainland and in Sicily. So that was like an amazing experience. Right out of left field that happened. Because when I wrote and had Solo in Salento published, it came out July 2020, and it was the very worst spot of COVID. So everything was canceled. All my book events were canceled. So I thought, well, I'll be lucky if I can sell this to my friends and neighbors. But it limped along, and a lot of people read it because they couldn't travel. And so it was the perfect opportunity to pick up a book that would take them to the small village and have the food and the wine and the weird adventures that I had while I was there. And then 2 years later, to have an Italian publisher pick it up, read it, and they had never been to that region of Italy, and they decided to visit and go there and meet some of the people that I write about in the book. So,
very cool.
Yeah, so that was just amazing. And then it's just one thing has led to another, and there's an Italian saying, "Cose nasce da cose." One thing leads to another.
Right. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's a magical journey.
Yeah, I'm a believer.
Awesome. Very cool. So maybe then we can just immediately set the mood here. Usually we start with drinks, but maybe today we can start with a reading from the book, just to kind of set our Italian atmosphere.
All right. And I was trying to think of something, because there are so many funny parts to the trip. When you plan a trip, you think about what you're going to take with you, maybe what you're going to do and see when you get there, but you don't prepare yourself for living in a place that's not your country, that doesn't speak your language, and two of the things that really kept tripping me up were I decided to take a mosaic class because I thought, well, that will introduce me to other people and I won't feel so out of my element. Well, my instructor didn't speak any English, and I didn't realize how complicated the craft of making mosaics is in the old traditional manner. So I have all sorts of comments to make about that particular class and how I survived it. And then the other thing that happened, and this is just such an ordinary thing, the trash, the recycling was so complicated. I felt like I needed to go back to school and get a degree in engineering to figure it out. So
Sure.
I do write a lot about those. So I was trying to think, should I pick that? Should I pick something that's really describes the country and is really beautiful? So it's sort of hard to know what I want to read So I'm just going to pick just this moment when I was standing on the terrace, and it was going to be my very first day of my solo trip.
Uh-huh.
So I stand alone on the terrace of my temporary home in Otranto. It's a beautiful fall day. A tender breeze dances lazily through my hair. Looking towards Albania, I watch its white, shining mountains merge from the sea. It shifts back and forth in my vision, creating optical illusions. It's a mythical image for me to consider as I stretch into my new world and consider my weary spirit. My wish for the month of solitude shrouds me in reality. It looms in my face, a large question mark, challenging me to rediscover value in my life, to remember what it's like to be only myself, not someone's wife, daughter, sister, aunt, or friend, just me. And because I'm still living the self-imposed life of not letting anyone down, I plan to study the ancient art of mosaics and scrutinize the cathedral door and learn about the massacre. And maybe, just maybe, I'll write a book.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So yeah, so no, that's lovely. It really sets the mood here with everything. And I have a ton of questions I want to get into about the journey here, and about your many travels in general. But I think now it's the show's called Writers Drinking Whiskey, and I've really put off the drinking portion
Here
of
it
it.
I have my glass.
Very good, very good. So what are we drinking today?
Well, of course, we would have to drink something Italian today. So we're going to have an Aperol Spritz. And I love this drink. It is, Aperol is an herbal alcoholic drink, and it's full of many different and strange herbs and roots. And it's a beautiful color, as you can see. Like it's like a burst of the sunrise or the sunset. And this drink is 3 parts of that Aperol, and then 3 parts Prosecco. And I found a little miniature bottle of it. Otherwise, I'd have to drink a lot of them before it went flat.
Right.
And so I'm just doing 3 ounces of this, and it goes into the same glass. And then, as always, with a lot of mixed drinks, you just want to splash a club soda. It's not anything amazing. I know a lot of people just kind of pass it over, but I usually just put a little splash in there. And then, of course, we're going to fill it up with ice. And I forgot my ice scoop, so I'm using my hand.
No problem. We don't judge hand use or not. I mean,
And then what gives it, again, even more glorious color is this nice slice of orange in here. Now, to Americanize it just a little bit, which my husband hates this when I do that, but I like a sprig of mint in mine. And it's just it just gives you a little bit of zest, I think, along with
Sure.
the orange. But
Right.
so what I would say in Italian is salute, to your good
Salute.
health.
Very
Yes.
good. Awesome. And I'm going to go easy today because I always like it when the guest has a nice drink. I don't want to completely bamboozle the show with drink recipes. So I'm just having a nice glass of, if it shows there, just a nice glass of Chianti in a little wicker basket. I did try to see if I could find an Italian whiskey. I've never particularly heard of any, but I was like, I wonder because it's gotten so popular over the years. There was one I found online, but could not pick up a bottle. So that'll be a future episode. I'll see if I can. I think they said they're the first Italian malt whiskey distillery. So
Oh, you'll have to
I'll
let
see
me
if I
know
can.
that where that is, because I certainly have never run into it on any of my travels there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I haven't either. So I will just be having a glass. So I think this is my first glass
Okay.
of wine on the show. So
All
cheers.
right. I will tell you that the region of Puglia has fabulous wines. Not so many whites because the sun is very intense in that area. So the grapes are wonderfully spicy and rich. And so they have a Primitivo, they have a Salentino, and they have Nero Amaro, which is really my favorite. It's a full-bodied wine, and it's
Uh-huh.
quite lovely. So we really enjoy the wines when we go there, but we like full-bodied dry wines. So
Sure, sure. I do too. I'm not real big on sweet. I mean,
no,
when my wife jokes, and it's maybe she's not joking, she's just commenting. When we go out to dinner, her and the kids, whoever we with, order dessert. I order a cocktail. I'm like, I have
there
no
you
interest
go.
in the cakes or whatever it might be. I get an old fashioned, 9 times out of 10, and
Yeah.
then that's what we do. So it's all of our favorite time of the meal, so it works out.
It sounds good to me. My favorite for a dessert is from Sicily, and it's from a little town called Modica. And it's the only place that I know of that makes this, and it is cioccolato pepperoncini. So it's a chocolate after dinner drink infused with red peppers. And it's
Uh-huh.
just that sweetness and I'm
Uh-huh.
a chocoholic, so I love that. But it's offset by that peppery flavor.
Sure.
So I always bring a
Yeah.
bunch of those bottles home with me.
Right, right. Yeah, that sounds good. So the question I like to ask, and then maybe we put it in that region in Salento or Tronto specifically. Um, if we're visiting, where is the best place to get a drink?
The Blue Bar.
The Blue Bar?
I write about it in my book. And the most wonderful thing about the Blue Bar is Giovanni, and he owns it. And when I was back there, I did my book tour in the fall of 2022, and then my husband and I were there in the spring of this year. And it's just so wonderful to have friends so that when you return, there's this big
Sure.
welcome for you. And he's got my book. He's got a glass case with all the really best wines in it. And my book is sitting right in that case.
Very cool.
So
That is an
I
honor for sure.
yes, but they have anything you want there. And it's just such a great place. And with a drink like this, if you go at lunch, you order an aperitivo and tell them what drink you want. And I will come, and I think I sent you a photograph of beautiful appetizer, little sandwiches and all kind of things, and your drink. Now, when I was there, during where the book is based, it was probably €5. Now it's 12. So you can see the
Uh-huh.
difference in prices. But it's
Sure.
just so much fun. They bring you out all these traditional little nibbles of food, and then you get your drink of choice.
So getting to the trip that inspired the book here, how would you describe? So I know part of the reading you had mentioned like reestablishing your self value. I think was the way you had put it on there. How would you describe kind of where you were in life, maybe kind of leading up to deciding to make that trip?
I was in a really bad place. I had been dragging a lot of my past around with me for years and had never sorted through it or worked through it. It was just like I was raised, you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and go on. You bury whatever's happening and move. And I'd done that for all those years. And it was like kind of this catastrophic moment when everything kind of just started crumbling. And it had nothing to do with my relationship with my husband, my marriage, any of that. And he was so supportive. But it was as if all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. It was simply, I had to move out of all of these voices yelling at me, do this, do that. And as a dutiful daughter and previously married to a controlling person, and in my jobs, in my work, always doing what everybody expected me to do, I just hit a wall.
Sure.
The only thing my husband did say to me when I said I have to get away, he goes, "That's fine, dear. You go. And then I said, "I mean away, like I'm going to go to Italy." Like, why don't you just go to the beach? It's only a couple of hours.
Right.
No, I said, I'm getting totally away. I have to quit hearing these voices. I have to quit dropping my life to do what other people want me to do. And the only way to do that is get somewhere nobody knows my name.
Sure. Sure. It's
So
like
that's
the
what I
opposite
did.
of Cheers, right? You want to go where everyone
Yes.
knows your name. Like you
Yeah,
want the
everyone. No
no
one
one
knew
knows
my
your name.
name, but the blue bar became my Cheers.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I know it. I haven't. So I probably benefit from not being that dutiful, like you described, but I get the familiar pressures, just all the things. And then as uh, going through life, right? Like I have adult kids now. We have a couple of kids that aren't adults yet, and we have adult kids and even a couple of grandkids now. And it's so easy to get lost in all of that and trying to kind of, you love everyone. You're trying to do your best to love them and
Yeah.
support them. And sometimes in you loving and supporting other people, you stop, like, you don't realize it, but you stop loving and supporting yourself. And it gets to,
Right. Yes.
it can be a hard
And
rut to pull out of.
it is. And I'm of a generation that you would never be taught to love yourself. I mean,
Sure.
that would be
Right.
a sin, I'm sure. So I grew up having no respect for myself. I was just at everybody's beck and call because that's what a good Southern lady did. You cooked for people, you took care of them, you fulfilled whatever need it was that they had. And I just realized I had lost myself and I needed to find my way back.
Sure. And how did you settle on the Salento region and Otranto, specifically?
Well, my husband and I have been traveling to Italy since 1995, and we love it. And we've traveled all over. But I can't remember, I think it was 2010, for the very first time we went to Puglia, because I said it's a region we've never been to. Nobody's heard of it. Nobody knows where it is. Let's go there. So we went, and I'm the planner and the researcher in the family.
Sure.
So I did a lot of research for each little town that I thought might hold some interest for us. Well, this one little town, Otranto, has a famous mosaic floor. I shouldn't say famous because nobody knew it was there hardly, but a magnificent mosaic floor that was designed in 1163 by Pantaleone, who was a monk in a very eclectic and enlightened monastery at that time, which had both Islamic monks and Jewish monks and
Oh, wow.
Greek. So there was and just a variety of things. So he was chosen to create this mosaic floor. And it's absolutely amazing. It's a tree of life that's up on the back of two kind of prehistoric elephants. And it's just wondrous. And so that was one reason we went over there twice and the church was closed. Any small village in Italy is like that. You either have to know who has the key or you have to know the hours. And
Right.
so I was so disappointed. But I learned while I was there that there had been a massacre there in 1480s when the Ottomans were sailing down the coast with the goal of actually capturing the Pope, who was at that time resided in Naples. And the storms blew them off course and they landed in Otranto, where they proceeded to bombard the fortress and decapitate 800 of its citizens. So
Wow.
I thought, if I'm ever going to write, what a topic. I'll write about that. So that was a reason. Then it's on the Adriatic coast. It is incredibly beautiful. The walled city itself has about 500 residents. And then there's kind of a post-World War II city that sprawls outside of it and maybe it could have 5,000. I don't know that it does.
Sure.
But I was so intrigued with this wall that wrapped around the city and the ancient buildings and cathedrals and churches within that tiny space inside that walled village. And we visited a lot of other places, but that one drew me. And on the promenade, they have this gorgeous promenade, and they have this statue. At the time when I saw her, I didn't read a lot of Italian, and I wasn't sure what she represented, but she was standing with a torch in her hand, and she was looking out over the harbor. And I just felt this sense of safetyness, of peacefulness, of a strong woman. And she's still my muse when I write.
Sure.
And I named her Idrusa, and now half the people in the town call her Idrusa. So she was put there as a reminder of that tragedy of being invaded by foreigners, and she was put there as a reminder that that would never happen again.
Right. So, man, that's beautiful. It is. And you know I always find it, beautiful, especially with Europe, because there's just layers upon layers of history and things. And I think there is in America, it's just a lot of it wasn't written down and things, right? So there's a lot of the native history that we're just not as familiar with, and maybe just didn't build stone blocks, like we did castles in Europe and things. So, but in Europe, you really feel that, and there's that really human and very innately just inspiring bit that here's this site that was 800 people beheaded, this horrible invasion, this horrible tragedy. And that place, generations later, maybe the next generation, but was again a place where people lived and where people loved and where people felt joy and anger and everything else, but still made a life and make a life to this day. And that even when you have these events and someone tries to come through and destroy it and destroy the will of a people, it doesn't seem to work. It's I sometimes feel conflicted with humans, because sometimes we do really horrible things like that, but then the flip side, you're like, man, we're kind of awesome too. There's really some beauty and then when they go, oh, would aliens even be interested? And I'm like, I think so, actually. You really think about what we're doing, like we're complicated a lot. Like it's never would cease to amaze, I would think. Was that trip, was it the first time you had ever done traveling, solo by yourself, at least maybe like a major trip like that?
Yes. In my business life, I traveled a lot and traveled alone, but there were always people at the other end waiting for meetings and what have you. So I didn't really see that as a solo time where it was really just me and I wasn't responsible for anyone or anything else. So yes, and I stayed almost 5 weeks by myself. It was magical. I mean, it was hilarious. I got in a lot of unusual situations that I had to figure out how to get myself out of. I met a lot of wonderful people that I'm still friends with today. I met other people that no.
Sure.
They were, and I will tell you, they were not the Italians. So
Very good.
it was a very rich and rewarding time. And the healing process for me took place within the layers of antiquity, within the layers of living a far more simplistic life, to allow the healing to occur, to listen to the voice that said, you need this time, this calmness, this review of how you want your life to be going forward.
Sure. How would you say you changed from the start of that trip to the 5 weeks later when you're boarding the jet to come home?
I didn't want to come home. I almost didn't. And my husband was really concerned that I might not come home. I
Right.
changed. One of the things that happened to me, and again, I grew up in a generation that was very stoic. My parents were, they came through a lot of hard times, and we were taught there's not a lot of emotion as you embrace life. You're not happy, you're not sad, you're not angry, you don't cry, you just go on.
Sure.
And what happened is, to live like that, you have to close your heart up, not to feel anything. And what happened to my heart, it just cracked wide open. And I found myself sobbing over the most inconsequential things, like the sunrise or the flower, or just a wave rolling up to the shore and a particular light catching it. Everything brought me to tears. And I found such joy that I have retained since that time, and have lived my life quite differently.
Sure. Well, you know, it's funny because sometimes I've joked that I'm a bit of a fractured stoic. There's certain aspects to just keeping some balance and things that and there's some lessons from, it was Marcus Aurelius, I think is a very famous stoic back in the day, also going back to Rome, but going back to Italy here. And I think there is things you can learn about keeping balance, keeping some, but the reason I say fractured is because I also think no, but sometimes you need to let your hair down, you need to enjoy this moment or feel this loss, and then kind of try to come back to it with some balance after. But if you miss those brilliant moments of being alive, those sometimes brilliantly painful, but brilliant sensationally, down to your core, then you really are missing something. It's really hard to keep that balance 100% of the time, and just go through life. You have to have some highs and lows and learn how to deal with them.
Yes, you do.
So I was gonna ask too, so you go over and you get to spend 5 weeks by yourself in a foreign land, right? Still a Western land, as we like to say. I sometimes don't know. We're always like Western or Eastern. I'm like, I don't know where the borders are. Where we describe these things exactly, but quote unquote a Western land. How did it change at all your overall worldview? Or
I think I've been traveling so long. When I was in my 20s, my first trip was to Spain and to Africa. And so early on, I recognized how small my world was and how homogenized it was. And I love travel. I love knowing about other cultures, other food, other legends. I love listening to people telling stories. So my travels have opened me up as a person, have really helped me expand my thought process to be far more tolerant than, again, I was raised to be, and to really try to cut any kind of judgmental things out of my life, because we all see our life that we have been given through different filters and different upbringings and different languages and different stories. And so, yes, travel has, I love it. I'm still doing it, and I hope I'll do it as long as I possibly can. I love what it teaches me about other people in other countries, but it also teaches me personal lessons about how to live my life better.
Right. Right. That's beautiful. When you so when you go to set off to write about it, to bring us back to the writing here for a bit, the most autobiographical book I've wrote is called "But the Ripping Apart," and it's still very fictionalized. But the protagonist Jack he's in his early 30s. He's a single dad, and he's struggling with maybe drinking too much and everything else, the childhood abuse. All these things are coming to roost, and he has to deal with it. And it was based on a real event that my wife had. This old school teacher, my then girlfriend, but my now wife had an old school teacher that she kept in contact with, and she wanted to go visit her, and she was afraid though because she wasn't answering the phone, so she was afraid something terrible might have happened. So she had asked me to go with her, and the lady unfortunately she was an alcoholic. She was hoarding, it was
Mhm.
very cinematic even in my thinking of it today. But that made me really think about like where I was at that moment, because you can see it now. I would never be a hoarder because I'm more likely to get rid of stuff. Like I have 3 drawers famously, and once my clothes outfill those, I get rid of clothes. But the effects of it, kind of seeing where you can kind of start to being someone's hero, like she was to my wife to then, like it made me really analyze that. And because I had fictionalized it so much, and by the end of it, I don't really recognize myself. Jack was almost me always to the worst, like this um that I didn't really recognize myself in it. But then when my wife read it, she started questioning what was real versus not, like feelings and things. And then I didn't, in the writing of it, because I see it as art all the time, I didn't think about the people around me as much as I should have. I didn't think about her feelings and really think about anyone's feelings. I was just writing the story, that had some parallels and some things that had really happened that were put in there. How did you manage that aspect of it? So, with your husband, with the people, the characters, but the real life people that are that were at, Javier and, the people at the bar. How did you handle, kind of portraying those that was true to like your experience of things? Did you worry about like, the portrayals of them? Was there any, I mean, maybe there was nothing that was needing to be worried about, but how did you manage that?
There are a couple of people in the book that I actually did change the names of those characters, but I kept the. While I was writing it, I didn't think about it because it would have stopped me from writing.
Sure.
Some of the stories, the background stories that I told, did not make my family particularly happy.
Mhm.
So I didn't. It was a story I needed to write for myself. And when I started writing it, it was not with the intention of publishing a book. I really wrote the first chapter because when we moved to where we live now, I wanted to join a writing group. And the criteria was we had to sort of interview each other, but also the first time I was invited to the group, I had to bring a piece to read and they were going to critique it, which I almost bailed out at that point because that was just totally frightening. But I went ahead and wrote a chapter, and I called it The Last Supper, and it is chapter 45 in my book now. But when I wrote it, I just wrote it with the essence of the experience still there in my mind, very, very clear. And it was with their encouragement that the book evolved because had no clue what one does with the story that they want to tell. uh,
Sure.
and I just kept writing and showing up for the classes and writing another chapter. And
Right.
then one day it was like, oh, this sort of all goes together, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
And because I had sort of thought, well, maybe I'd write short stories about that time, but it all went together as a book. And I do have to tell you, when I went back and did my book tour, that there are several chapters on this woman called Frederica, and she was
Mhm.
just wonderful and delightful, and she took me under her wing and all that sort of stuff. But one of the really interesting adventures I went on was getting in a car with her and her husband and his brother. And I really thought I was maybe being kidnapped. And I was a nervous wreck because none of them spoke any English, and for me it seemed to be very late at night, and I had thought I was meeting her just to do the passeggiata, which is the walk around town. And when I met her, she drags me off to the car, and I keep saying, well, where are we going? Where are we going? And nobody will talk to me, so I'm sure I'm being kidnapped. Yeah. But anyway, I wrote about that experience, and then right at the end, when they delivered me back safely, and I got out of the car, the brother gave me a note and put it in my hand. And I waited until I was walking back to my apartment. I opened it up and it had his name and phone number on it. So I just threw it in the trash. But Frederica said to me when she had after she'd read the book, she said, I didn't know that. That wasn't me. I would never have allowed that to happen. She says, I've divorced my husband since then anyway, and his brother was no good. So when I wrote when it was translated, I added just a sentence or two to that part. It's not in the English book that says Frederica was not part of that scheme. And she was happy.
Right. That is very funny.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
But everybody else, like Giovanni, just, like he keeps the book in his bar, the restaurant, all of the people they're very happy. It really put Otranto on the map. And it was the mayor who invited me to come and speak there, which was hilarious because I was really looking forward to meeting him. And I got on the plane, and when I landed, the first text I had was from my publisher telling me that the mayor had been indicted for corruption. I'm like, and my publisher's saying, I'm not sure what we're gonna do.
Right. That is awesome. That's a great story in itself.
I know. So I never got to meet the mayor.
One day, next trip. Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, the vice mayor did introduce me, and then when I went back this spring, this gentleman I had met while I was there is also an author and was writing a book, and his book release was while I was there, and he asked me to speak. So he had invited the current mayor. I got to meet the current mayor and give him a copy of my book.
Very good.
Oh, but interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like, I mean, at least with the first book, right, that you wrote it after the fact. It wasn't kind of a writing journey, or was it kind of both? I'm curious how travel feeds into your writing, or vice versa. Okay,
with the first book, I had very little support for doing what I was doing outside of my husband, but I had a small handful of friends who were cheering me on. But they said, you have to send us an email every day and tell us that you're still alive and you're okay, and all of that. And I've always journaled. I started when I was like 7 years old, and I've never stopped. So for that trip, I journaled. That would be the thing I would do at the end of the day, or even sometimes when I was having lunch. I had a notebook with me. I was always writing down what happened. I wrote down dialogue. So I had all of this information when I did decide to write the book that I just went right back to. And certainly the narrative, there's a lot of creativity in it because I was not a speaker of Italian, or only a little bit. So I had to interpret a lot of the conversations as best as I could in the context in what they were presented. So it just all came to be because I had those notes at hand. This mystery series that I'm writing now, in the first book, the Red Starfish, one of the things you have to understand about my background, I was in corporate America for a long time, and then my husband and I decided to start our own business, and we were in the hospitality business. So we were the chefs at the restaurant we owned. We had a catering service, and we had a bed and breakfast. And we both loved to cook, and we had
Mhm.
attended different cooking schools in both America and other countries. And food it's sort of a ministry for us. It's how we take care of people. We bring them to the table. We let people be who they are without any kind of restrictions at the table. And I always say that all of the world could be settled easily if you would meet at the table and share a meal and break bread together. So this mystery actually started on the first time Ray and I traveled to Puglia, and we stayed in this magnificent villa overlooking this coastline. That was it's rock called karstic. It's like old volcanic rock, and the sea area is very rough because it's beating up against those rocks, and the spray would fly up on our terrace. And there was a marina down, and late at night we would be out sipping a glass of wine, and there would be these cars driving up, and they'd cut off the headlights and they'd flash them, and it was like, there's something going on down there. So I kept saying, I need to write a mystery. So that's how that started. And in the Red Starfish, that location figures into that book, that marina, what was going on down there, what was discovered that was going on. And of course, because my protagonist is a low country caterer, there's a lot of food. She's always trying to feed people to make them feel better. So, but the premise of the book is, and it really came out of friendship, female friendship. I can't tell you about male friendship. I just see it as very different. Female friendship, when it's good and it's solid, is impactful in your life, and it's a real restorative and healing relationship to have if you've got a good, trustworthy friend. So I base it on two friends who are living very different lives, but one of the friends is living in Italy and she goes missing. And so the caterer friend drops everything that she's doing and goes. And the story evolves as a result of that. Well, when the publisher picked me up, they picked it up with the intention that I should write 3 books for the series. I'm like, oh,
sure,
okay. So, but I'm loving it because I love the writing part. Everything else is like over my head, but the writing part I get such joy from. And so the first book starts. There's a little back and forth between the Low Country of South Carolina and Italy. And then the second book, which is already in the hands of my beta readers now, is in the Low Country. Although there are contacts with Italy, everything takes place in the Low Country. And then again, the third book is going to kind of be a mixture. But my heart place, besides being where I live now, which I just love living here, is Italy. And that's where my heart opened. That's where I found my heart for the first time. So it's hard for me not to write about it and not write about the beauty as I do this Low Country too. I walk every morning, and to walk through the massive oak arbors and the Spanish moss draped and the water sparkling and the marsh grasses flowing with the tide ebbing and flowing is just a wonderful thing. And I cannot write without having placed a character in every book I write.
Sure. And there's alligators. They're alligators that you can see sometimes, right?
Absolutely, but there are dolphins. There are snakes. There are mosquitoes. There are no-see-ums, which eat you after death. But I call it decadent beauty. You know, it's the good and the evil just really rolled up together, and in a balance too. Because to have that much beauty and have nothing to disturb it would not make for that balance. You've got to have the potential for hurricanes. You've got to have the sand fleas and the mosquitoes to go with all. You know, I look outside. I've got a massive oak in the yard that it would take 5 people to get their arms stretched out around it, and it's just draped with Spanish moss. And when it rains, the Spanish moss turns a gorgeous lime green. And then we have what is called resurrection ferns, and you'll walk everywhere, and there's these dead brown plants, and people that are not from this area go, why don't you pull those up? And I said, just wait. It rains. And there are these gorgeous, gorgeous green ferns that pop out everywhere, all over walls. They grow on trees, and they're on the little grotto that we have out in our courtyard. And it's just, it's a rebirth. And that's why I love these places. They continually remind me that every day I get to recreate my life.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. And so maybe we can get to a reading of the Red Starfish, but I do have a little, I like a few rapid fire questions here. So just give me first impression here. I like to call it, we're doing shots, but you don't have to, you can if you want to, but it's not mandatory.
You'll see me
God
go
knows
like
I will
this
be.
and I'll disappear if I were to do that.
Okay, so first one, can you roll your R's?
Not very well, but
because it's alchemy.
Frederica.
Oh, you can a little bit. I had no idea.
It's a particular tongue, roof of the mouth kind of interaction that as Americans or English speaking, we don't know how to do. But errara, I can do a little bit so that they don't totally burst out into hysterical laughter when I speak.
Sure. What irritates you the most when you travel?
Tourists.
I get what you mean.
Tourists that have no concept of why they're traveling, I guess. It's like, oh, we arrive, let's go get drunk. Or let's wade into the Trevi Fountain and fill our water bottle up. Let's put our signature on a piece of antiquity that's 900 years old. That is
yeah. Well, that was just made the news. I think people are doing that at the Roman Colosseum, right? Like etching their name into the brick.
Yeah, it's not having any respect, and it's a horrible thing to witness.
Sure. Absolutely. Have you ever witnessed anything inexplicable while you were traveling? I guess in general.
I don't know. I've always been, I've never met any aliens, which might be inexplicable, but I'm not a person that's easily surprised by things because I have seen and experienced so much in my life that I don't think so.
There you go. What's the worst trip you've ever been on?
See, I love all my trips. Oh, yes. No, I do have. I actually have two. When I think about it, this was with my ex-husband. One was to Las Vegas, where he was a gambler. And that was a very horrible trip. And then one was when we went to Spain together, and he drank too much, and it was very horrible. So both of those, it was hard for me to wrap my head around his misbehavior. That's why I left him.
Very good. So you left the worst trips, at the end of the day.
I let them go, and I even found glimmers of magic in those trips. So
very good. And then very last one here for our shots is, what's an underrated place to visit? Like everyone kind of knows Italy. It's on the bucket list a lot of times. Yeah. What's somewhere you've gone that people may not have on a bucket list, but maybe should?
I think Slovenia. I loved Slovenia. It is so gorgeous. And I think a lot of people just dismiss it. They'll go to Croatia, or they'll go to Austria, or they may even go to Hungary, but they're going, what's Slovenia? And it's a beautiful place. It is so clean. The highways are so immaculate and no potholes. And every 15 minutes, there's a fairy tale castle. Sure. So and they really work hard. They're very industrious. You know, they haven't come out of communists that long. I think it was like 1996 or something like that. So they're very brave people, and I really admire them.
Yeah, very good. That's lovely. So awesome. So then, if you don't mind, maybe then we could get the reading of I just threw my paper away. It's the Red Starfish.
The Red Starfish, yes.
Very good.
I'm gonna sort of talk about this a little bit.
Of course.
When the protagonist, and her given name is Caterina Maria Lucia Gabbiano, aka Cat. So called Cat. And she's an Italian American, and her grandparents, particularly her Nonna, taught her a lot about the family, the Italian family, and cooking. And because Kat when she went to university, she came out as an accountant and was quite miserable and didn't really understand, although her Nonna had always told her, one day you will find the magic in your hands and in feeding other people. And so she switched her whole lifestyle to go to culinary school and become a chef. So when she arrives, when her friend goes missing and she arrives in Italy, she's almost coming home, because for the first 17 years of her life, she and her friend spent their summers with their Italian families in this little village called Castello del Mare. And so she's coming home, but then she's shocked because 20 years have gone by since she's been there. Their lives have changed totally. Kat has gotten a divorce. Stella has gone on to be a film star. This whole thing is a very different road or path they've both taken. So she arrives thinking that possibly, even though she's been told Stella's missing, she's hopeful that Stella is just doing one of her publicity stunts or something, is going to meet her plane, but she doesn't. So she has to get a rental car and she has to drive herself to this place. So she's gotten out of the car while she's waiting for the caretaker to meet her, and decides that she's going to walk around and try to kind of find her legs again in this place that one time she called home. I think this is way too long to read, though. To get it. But anyway, she's caught in a rainstorm, and she has to make a decision. Where can she get to get out of this horrific storm? So that's where I'm going to start, is there. Buckets of rain spill over me. The wind howls, snatching the umbrella out of my hands. It tumbles in Olympic-style freefall down the narrow street as the village below vanishes in a gelatinous mist. Looking for shelter, I dash from overhang to overhang as swirling waters beat against my ankles. The wind cries into empty spaces between the buildings. A house seemingly vacant appears. I dash toward the alcove. The storm rumbles its way across the valley as I lean against the smooth, wet stones and let exhaustion wash over my body. Crippled by jet lag, sluggish from sleep deprivation, and ravenous from lack of food, I shudder as the day darkens. Nature lunges into my space, spinning my dream of living and working in Italy into a devilish nightmare. Everything had lined up: the money, my business, someone to rent my house, a chef's job waiting for me in Castello del Mare, and a reunion with my best friend Stella. After all the planning, that one whispered message had changed everything. I pull out my phone and listen again to her fear-filled voice. Kat, please, please help me. For 37 years, I've adjusted my life to suit Stella's. I'm her rescuer. It's a role I've played for too long. I had grand plans to point this out during our time together. Now, I simply pray I'm allowed to rescue her one last time. Wind whooshes through the alcove. I squint until my tears and the raindrops merge. My only wish is to be back in the car. I slump into a squatting position. My mind wrestles with the stupidity of the trip. My decision to change my life and live a year in Italy was spurred on by Stella's enthusiasm. The thing is, she took over my plan. A loose shutter scrapes against the stone wall. Adrenaline lurches through my tired body. Broken flower pots topple across the terrace. I shift deeper into the recesses of the alcove and glance around at my surrounding. The front door is weathered. A faded symbol catches my attention. I move closer for a look. A faint outline of a washed-out sun with a large single blue eye stares back at me. Coiled in the center of the eye is a snake. Its tongue flickers in my direction. I shiver, pulling back so quickly, I lose my balance, stumble on the wet tiles, and fall against the door. It gives under my weight. I yelp and hop backwards as it cracks open a sliver. Rain and wind slam into my back. Desperate to find a dry spot, I'm tempted to check inside. My hand gives a little push. A nerve-grating creak cuts through the storm's roar as a dark, dank interior is revealed. Inside, the darkness shifts. A fetid odor of decay assaults my nostrils. The murky interior vibrates with dark shadows. The door swings wider. A sharp stab of lightning paralyzes me in place as it illuminates the room. A figure shrouded in black leaps from the inky depths and grabs the sleeve of my jacket. I wrench free and tumble backwards. I crash onto the pavement. A hand grabs my ankle and drags me back onto the terrace. Kicking with all my strength, I hit a solid body part. The hand loosens. Jerking free, I roll into the flooded street. Without thinking, I run like hell. My ballet flats pound across the wet cobblestones as water splashes up the legs of my already saturated jeans.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's lovely. I'm riveted here. So that's coming out. So we're going to release that. That'll be out. I'll make sure to include a link for anyone that wants to, give it a buy here. And I like to say on the show, it's last call. You don't have to leave, but you'll have to restart the video. I like to close every show with just a couple pieces of advice. Maybe we can give back to the audience here. So, one is, if there was one piece of travel advice you could give our viewers, what would that be? And then the second bit of the question always being, if there's one thing that the people watching could do, one small thing, could be taking a walk in the morning, whatever it might be, that makes their life just a little bit better. What would you say that was?
Well, the first thing I would say is, and you lost me because I forgot what the first part of the
travel advice.
There's one thing and I give this advice over and over and over again. There's one thing that goes in my suitcase first, and it comes out first, and that's a sense of humor.
Very good.
If you don't have that, don't travel, because
Right.
you're going to be thrown so many situations that are unexpected, and you better have that sense of humor ready.
Sure. Very good.
And the other one was a bit of it. I think finding beauty in every situation, in every person you see, and finding your own personal joy through gratitude. And that's one of the things that I do. The first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I say, I'm grateful. I'm here. I have another day to be joyful in. And then at night, before I cut out the light, I say the same thing. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this wonderful husband I have. I'm grateful for this place I live. I'm grateful for the friends I have. I'm grateful for this creative time in my life. So I invite people to find that joy and to be grateful instead of finding all the things that are wrong.
Sure. I used to do that when I'd pick my son up. I still do it occasionally, and he's just gotten older and more cynical about it. But I used to always go, you want to go, how was your day? I was like, what's one thing you're grateful about from today? Yeah. And then you think of it and like, I like the food, or, we get to play, whatever it might be. And it is that shift in your worldview, like you're just shifting thinking, even when you just take a few moments like you described, can really be beneficial. I'm sure I could do it wildly more than I am now, but
We're so busy living these crazy lives. One of the difference between living here in the United States and living in Italy is the slowness of life, the importance of people in their lives, and the focus that, like, you and I have this time together. So I'm focused on you and you're focused on me. They do that daily with people. We don't do that. We're rushing by them. Oh, hi. Oh, let's grab lunch next week or something like that. We don't stop and say, really, tell me what's going on.
Right. No, that's beautiful. And that's partially what I love about the show. I always say it's a labor of fun. But the funnest part for me is getting the chance to meet people that maybe, we would have met in one of my sojourns out to, Beaufort in the Low Country. Maybe we would have spoke for 5-10 minutes, maybe we would have like had dinner and been in a group and talked for a few minutes, but it's unlikely we would have gotten to, sit down and really chat for an hour and get to know each other. So to me, it's wildly more enlightening, and I hope some of it goes to the reader, but otherwise, selfishly, I'm good. It's been a great time.
It's
so,
a wonderful experience, and I hope you do come back to Beaufort, South Carolina, and we'll feed you.
I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm getting a good, good setup going. So I'm going to have to make a trip of it soon. And if people do want to learn more about you, your writing, what's the best place what's the best way for them to do that?
My Facebook page is Donna Keel Armer. My website is donnaarmer.com. And I think you have an email address also for me. I'm not a really high-tech person, so I don't have Twitters and tweets and Instagrams. Right. I think I have a LinkedIn that's so old I don't remember the last time. Every once I get a message, somebody saying, "Where are you?"
Right, the remnant from the corporate past, the LinkedIn. I have one too, and that's also with remnant of my corporate sorted past here. But awesome, and I have the links, I believe already. I'll be sure to include them with the description on YouTube, and on my website I'll have the all kind of. YouTube has a character restriction, so I'll put what I can in there, and anyone that wants more information, you cruise over my website, and I don't have any character restriction on the whole show. Will be on there with the notes. So great. Well, so thank you so much for your time. It was lovely. It was an honor, having you on the show, and getting to hear more about your travels and life and your writing. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill. It's been great fun, and my drink is dripping all over me now. So.
I know. I've been a little tardy with it, but cheers.
Salute.
Salute.